You're tuned in to Philly's #1 college radio station, WHIP.
College basketball tips off on the CBS Sports Network this Friday as USC takes on Utah State at 9 p.m. Eastern Time. CBS Sports Network is available across the country through local cable, video, and telecode providers and via satellite on DirecTV Channel 221 and the Dish Network Channel 158. For more information and including a full programming schedule on how to get CBS Sports Network, go to www.cbssportsnetwork.com. With all that being said, Temple basketball is back and they return to action this Saturday at the Palestra playing Penn. Let's go out to the hotline right now and welcome in CBS Sports Network college basketball insider, and that's Jon Rothstein. John, it's your buddy Zach Gelb and Chase Sr. here on WHIP Radio in Philadelphia. How are you?
Good, guys. Good to be with you.
Well, great to have you on, and happy college basketball season to you. And we look at this Temple basketball team. It was a team that got to the NCAA tournament a year ago. They played a deep game up against Indiana and almost upset them, led by Khalif Wyatt. They have a tough schedule moving into a new conference in the American Athletic Conference, and they lose 5 seniors. How do you think they stack up in the AAC, as this is going to be a tough task for one Fran Dunphy?
Well, I don't think it's just going to be a tough task. I think it's going to be the toughest task that Fran Dunphy has had in his coaching career. Temple would have had a difficult time this year if they were still in the Atlantic 10, but they're bumping up a weight class right now. They're not going to be playing teams like LaSalle or VCU or Butler or teams of that magnitude. Not that those aren't terrific programs, but they're going to be doing battle with Cincinnati, Temple, Louisville, UConn. So the bar has certainly been raised for the Owls.
I talked to Fran the other day, and he talked about how guys like Anthony Lee and Will Cumming really need to step up and embrace that leadership role, and he has all the confidence in them. They lose those 5 seniors in Khalif Wyatt, Scooty Randall, TJ DeLeo, Raleigh Hollis Jefferson, and Jake O'Brien. What do you expect out of Lee and Will Cummings this year as they need to really elevate their game?
They'll be the constants, but I don't think that's really the issue with Temple. You know, I've seen Temple practice twice. Will Cummings looks like by far the Owls' best player. The bottom line for Temple, though, is they need offense. And, you know, Quentin DeCozy, Daniel Dingle, and Dalton Pepper, those 3 guys, 2 of that triumvirate is going to have to be good offensively for Temple to have a chance to win on a nightly basis. That's going to be a big factor, those 3 players, Pepper, Dingle, and Quentin DeCozy.
Hey, John, it's Chase Sr. Thanks for hopping on board with us. When we were at Media Day last week, Fran Dunphy talked to the media and said that Quentin DeCozy is going to have to be the #1, if not the second leading scorer on the team for this squad to be successful. You mentioned that you were at practice a couple of times. I know you were here just a week or 2 ago. What have you seen from Quentin? Because he's a raw prospect. He's a really good athlete. We saw that he could score the rock last year, but he also is not an experienced player. And Khalif Wyatt leaving this squad leaves a huge void in the scoring column.
He needs to improve his motor. He needs to play hard on every possession. He needs to play like he wants to be a 20-point-per-game guy. It looks like sometimes Quentin DeCozy isn't as engaged as he needs to be on a regular basis. And, you know, Temple can't afford that because they're not going to be able to play poorly at certain spots on the floor and have a chance to win because they're not good enough right now at so many of the positions on the floor considering the competition that they're going to be facing on a regular basis. That's the thing. Temple would have been rebuilding and retooling if they were still on the same playing field, but they're not on the same playing field. And they're also going to have the most difficult schedule probably in the program's history.
I talked to Daniel Dingle last week, and he said he's not going to be a guy that is going to score the rock in bunches, but what he's going to do is fill up the stat sheet. He was a highly touted high school prospect coming from the Bronx to Temple. I know you're really high on him. What makes you so high on Daniel Dingle? Because he can virtually do anything on the floor.
Well, I mean, to be honest with you, I think if Daniel Dingle wants to get on the floor for this Temple team, it has to be as a four-man. I think, you know, based on what I've seen so far, I think Mark Williams is going to be somebody who probably gives Temple a little bit more of that traditional power forward than Daniel Dingle would right now. It's going to take a little bit of sacrifice on the defensive end for Daniel Dingle, and it's also going to take, you know, some of the understanding that for Temple to be at its best this year, it's going to have probably Will Cummings, Josh Brown, either Quentin DeCozy or or Dalton Pepper on the perimeter with Daniel Dingle on the block. He's going to have to be more physical. He's going to have to embrace who he is, and that's, I think, an undersized four-man versus the perimeter three.
Jon Rothstein joins us, CBS basketball insider for CBS Sports Network. And, John, Fran Dunphy in the past hasn't played freshmen an ample amount of minutes, but Anthony Lee said at practice the other day that Josh Brown's been getting a lot of burn. You mentioned Mark Williams. It just seems like a little bit of a different feel with Dunphy playing these freshmen early on in their career.
Well, considering the attrition that Temple had last year with graduation, with all the guys that they've lost, they don't really have a choice. These two guys will definitely be integral parts of Temple's rotation.
And then you see a player like Dalton Pepper. Do you think he'll be more comfortable here in year number 2 at Temple University because he wasn't consistent a year ago?
Well, this is it right now. I mean, there is no time like the present. He went to West Virginia. It didn't work out there. He had a disappointing season last year, and Temple needs 8 to 10 points from Dalton Pepper if they're going to have a chance.
What we've seen from Fran Dunphy in the past is kind of a slow-paced offense, especially last year with Khalif Wyatt, because they had to give him the scoring opportunities for that team to be successful. This is a more athletic team that we've seen in years past, also a younger team too. Is this going to be a team that is going to get up and down the floor more so than we've seen under Fran Dunphy in prior years?
Absolutely not. I think they're going to have to manage possessions more than they ever have, because think about it. If you're going to accelerate the pace, you're going to give the other team more possessions because you're using less of the shot clock. Using more possessions right now would put you in a situation where you are going to be at a deficit because Temple doesn't have any proven scorers, guys. That's one thing you have to remember. This team does not have proven scorers. I think they're going to have to try and win a lot of 55, 52 games.
I know they have to rely on Anthony Lee a lot, but we've seen he's improved his jump shot, that mid-range jump shot. Is that a concern for a big man, as you really want to see Anthony Lee be that big physical player down low?
He's a role player. Anthony Lee is who he is. That's not going to change. He's got to get Temple close to a double-double.
Jon Rothstein joins us from the CBS Sports Network. And, John, this team struggled last year up against big men. They don't have that much, a whole lot of size, and they kick off the season on Saturday versus Penn. And Dunphy's talked a lot about David Winfield, who's a 6'10 freshman at 280 pounds. That looks like a tough matchup there for the Owls on Saturday.
Yeah, the Owls will definitely be tested in a raucous environment, and I know talking to a lot of the guys at Penn that they are optimistic this year in the Ivy League. So it'll be one team retooling and one team trying to get off to a good start in the Ivy League.
This is a Temple team that's made the NCAA tournament 6 straight years. Obviously, they're playing a plethora of really good opponents, headlined by some key head coaches as well. Do you see Temple winning 18 to 20 games and making it in the NCAA tournament again, or is this so-called a rebuilding year for the Owls?
I do not see Temple doing that right now. I would never bet against Fran Dunphy, but I think when you look at things realistically, Temple was picked 5th in the preseason coaches poll in the American Athletic Conference. I think it just shows you and reiterates how much Fran Dunphy's peers respect him. But, based on what I've seen, this Temple team in the preseason poll should have been ranked anywhere between 8 and 10.
Let's give you a few more questions, and then we'll let you run. Let's stay here in Philadelphia. Villanova really surprised a lot of people last year. You saw Archie Diacono was a big-time freshman. You're number 2 in that program. What do you expect out of the Wildcats under Jay Wright?
They'll compete for a Big East title. I think you'll see a big jump this year from Darren Hilliard. He could lead Villanova in scoring. And
how about St. Joe's? They had a disappointing season from a year ago.
DeAndre Bembry will be one of the best freshmen in the Atlantic 10, but the question is, can they get enough from their point guard spot to compete with the better teams in the Atlantic 10? This is a make-or-break year for St. Joe's in a lot of ways, because the last 2 years they've had NCAA-level talent, and they showed you flashes of resembling a team that could get to the field of 68. They haven't been able to capitalize on all those opportunities.
John, LaSalle had a magical run to the Sweet 16 last year. They lose Ramon Galloway, but they also have some proven scorers in Tyreek Duren and Ty Garland. Also, Jarrell Wright is due for a breakout year down low. How do you see LaSalle doing this year?
I expect LaSalle to be near the top of the Atlantic 10. I think Ty Garland could potentially lead the conference in scoring with the new rules that allow more freedom of movement.
John, thanks so much for hopping on the show today. We appreciate it, and we'll talk to you again throughout the course of the season.
Anytime.